Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hello, everybody. This is Jared. Welcome back to another episode of All Things Crime. I am excited to be back with you. It's been a little bit, Memorial Day weekend and all that. So excited to be back here. And today we have a special guest that is kind of not typical for the show. His name is Jimmi Toro. And I'll tell you, I've been reading his profile and studying up on him a little bit and deciding, how best to approach interviewing Jimmi here and getting his story out to you. I'll tell you, it's pretty rare that, in my opinion, that victims are able to tell their story over and over. But what really intrigued me about Jimmi is not only the trauma that he went through, and actually went through twice from what you say in your profile, Jimmi, but also that you have healed from it and that you have the ability to overcome this trauma and lead basically a normal life. And that is really intriguing to me. And I think a lot of society needs to learn this because frankly, there's so much trauma out there that I think is going not just unrealized, but also unaddressed. So Jimmi, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I want to go to Amazon.com, just reading in his book. And I don't want to get into actual details about some of the trauma that you went through, but I do want to read a little bit of this. Imagine, if you will, a group of sadist cowards essentially traumatizing a 4-year-old. Jimmi lived these and hundreds of similar horrors twice. First as a child at the hands of ritualistic sexual deviants, and decades later, the horror resurfaced in an avalanche of extreme pain, awful memories, and massive hormonal damage to my body. But his book is called Heal, and he's also an artist and a painter. And I've been looking at some of your paintings, Jimmi, and just extraordinary. Even the cover of your book, I think is so leveled in there. I don't know if I'm not an artistic type. So the levels of trauma that I see just in your book cover is pretty unbelievable. So Jimmi, I want to ask you if you would first kind of go into detail about the initial trauma that you experienced as a 4-year-old, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, you bet. So what's interesting relative to your podcast and the subject you talk about is, let's say you take a classic father who beats his child, right? He gets angry one day and beats his child, puts his fist on his face and draws blood. Well, that's child abuse, right? Well, if you take a same kind of person who rapes his child, that's a lot worse. It's a whole different level of abuse, right? Well, to make that even worse, you take an individual who rapes his child and enjoys it. Now you're getting into the real awful predators of the world. These are sadists. These are, the definition of sadist is somebody who enjoys inflicting pain on another. And these are the types of predators that law enforcement and others like myself are trying to figure out and find and protect our communities, especially our little kids from. Now, these types of predators, they often work alone, like a serial killer might, but they also organize in groups. And let's talk about two types of groups. One would be a group similar to like an individual who owns a brothel, right? Well, they have a business. And they have clientele and they have a product. And the product usually is a sex worker. And their clients come in, they pay them money, they put them in a room and they do what they do and they do it over and over and over and they make money at it. Well, these awful cowards, child abusers, pedophiles, etc., they do the same thing, but their product is children. And they're definitely more underground because the last thing they want to do is get found out, because it's all illegal. Well, in those situations, they have a product, and the product is children, little children, and their clientele are the awfulest people in the world. And they will come to an establishment like that, and they have their preferences. They may say, I want a 4-year-old blonde boy, or I want a 6-year-old Asian girl, or whatever they order, let's say, to satisfy their creepy behavior. These children, they often age out. Sometimes boys will age out around age 8 or 9 or something like that. That's not uncommon, because a little boy can start to fight back and not be as easily manageable. Unfortunately, girls take the brunt of this. Most of child abuse happens to girls by far more than boys. And often the girls stay longer in an organization like that. Sometimes these organizations will kill the children after they've been abused for years and years and harvest their organs on the black market. So there's a whole nother crime syndicate that goes on, a whole nother way that these creepy people can make money. Well, because their product can die, can age out, etc., they're always on the look for more product. And so in your communities, these creeps wake up every day and they literally scheme and plot and plan to steal your child if they can. That's what they do. And so if you have children in a community, your 13-year-old daughter is walking around in the mall with their friends, there's a high likelihood that they are being viewed by a predator and they don't even know it. Then you have a different type of organization of these creeps, and it falls more into like the sexual ritualistic stuff, the religious stuff, the satanic worshipers, etc. And they get together in their little creepy bands and they have their rituals and they wear their robes. And central to many of these groups, and this has been the way through history, central to their creepy deviant rituals is to sacrifice children. It's just what they do. And they enjoy it. That's the thing that most people in the community don't understand is how can a human being enjoy that awful behavior? Well, they do. And there's a whole lot of psychologists trying to figure out why an adult can grow up and become that kind of adult. I sort of don't care. I just know they do. And they're out there and they're very harmful. Well, my story was being caught up in that situation where I was little, my dad mostly, and several other groups in a little community in Central California. They were involved in these religious rituals where they abused and tortured and killed children. And I made it out alive, and many kids don't. And so from about age 3 to about age 8, for all those years, this kind of awful stuff happened to me. And it's unimaginably awful. It's not just like we're going to lock you up in a room for a day and not give you food and water. That doesn't satisfy what they do. Years ago, I read a book called POW about the prisoners of war in Vietnam. And one prisoner describes a story where he was being tortured. The torturer took his finger and put it in the prisoner's eye and rolled it around, which is awful, right? Well, what made it even worse is he noticed that the torturer was sexually aroused while he was doing it. And these creeps who do this stuff, they are aroused sexually, and they are only satisfied if there's screams and torture and pain and abuse off the charts, to the point where they enjoy even killing kids as part of what they get off, what brings them some sick pleasure. From the mouth or from the quote of a convicted sex offender, I am master manipulator. I manipulate children and I manipulate adults. I was a father, a brother, a son, a husband, an uncle, and nobody had a clue that I wanted to have sex with 5-year-old little Susie. They are really good at hiding, and they're addicted. I'm another pedophile. I am addicted to torturing, raping, brutalizing little kids as I am to cocaine. It's more of an addiction. These creeps are addicts hardcore. And as you know, they don't change. Once they've hit that bottom, they are that way for life. One last quote from one of these creeps, and we'll move on, is he says, "A little child to me is no different than a ham sandwich. A ham sandwich is an object that satisfies my need for hunger. A little child is an object that satisfies my need to sexually abuse and dominate." These are the kind of predators we're dealing with out there in our communities. And I assume in your line of work, you run into these creeps, and you run into, how do we find them, and how do we warn neighborhoods and communities that they are waking up plotting to hurt and steal and ruin our children because they enjoy it so much.
Wow. Yeah. Of the sexual crimes detectives and people that I've worked with, OUR and different organizations like that, it's one of the things that I have always kind of attested to is, in my mind, sexual crimes, especially against children, are actually more damaging to society than even homicides, because in a murder, and I don't want to kind of belittle or minimize how awful homicides are, but when an individual is murdered, the pain from that crime to that victim is over. The murder victim's gone.
Yeah.
Now there's lasting trauma, obviously, to the family, but the problem with sex crimes, especially against little children, is that trauma lives for the rest of that person's life. And, when you take the most innocent and you expose them to the worst situation that they can possibly physically endure and be a part of, then psychologically, physically, mentally, there's all sorts of ways that person is now so damaged and is carrying that, and not only individually has to deal with, but there's I don't know what the exact stats are, but the number of sexual predators who were themselves sexually abused when they were younger is off the charts. So
let me explain that a little bit if I could.
Yeah, please.
When you're a little kid, and this applies to adults too, but we'll talk about kids mostly. When you're a little kid and you're tortured or abused, or you experience a level of trauma, the one thing you want more than anything by far is you want safety. And, if you're abused by your caretakers or your parents, or you're in a situation where you cannot find safety, you literally store all of that abuse in your body. Now, if you're a little girl and you're raped as a 4-year-old by an uncle, and you can find safety in your mom's arms, you have a mother who loves you, you can literally release that abuse at that moment. You can get it out of your system. But when you don't have that safety to go to, you literally store it all. And what happens, it's not uncommon with men. This is the case with me, as I stored this for 30, 40 years. It's not uncommon with men to have that, what they call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And then in case of child abuse, it's just put a C in front of it, CPTSD, standing for child. When that comes tumbling back into your adult life, it's not uncommon to come back in your early 50s. That's not uncommon. And so your body literally stores that for all those decades. And it can come back. It can be triggered and come back. An event can happen, or it can come back absolutely random, just completely out of the blue. And when it comes back, when those episodes come back, people hear about this with kids who go to war and they come back from war post, and they have these memories come back, which mess with their whole lives. Well, it's not just the memory that comes back. It's the sights, the sounds, the smells. It's everything comes back. And let's say, so in one case, when I was little, I was buried in a coffin, a 4-year-old little kid. Imagine it. These creeps all doing their ritualistic stuff. And they enjoy this, by the way. And, to make it worse, they put a dead body in the coffin. It was an adult body, and they cut it from its throat down and ripped the guts out. So its ribs were splayed out. And so they put this little kid, me and several others, stuck in this cavity of this dead body in a coffin in the ground, shut the lid, and for all you know, that's it. Talk about the level of scared that little kid goes through. Well, when that memory comes back, that level of scared comes back with a vengeance. You feel every bit of it. You feel all of that. And not just that. When that happens to you, your body excretes these hormones, these panic hormones, these fight and flight hormones, adrenaline, cortisol rush through your body. And talk about extreme panic. And well, as an adult, when these come back, all those hormones come back as well. It all comes back. And so when I'm revisiting this as an adult, my whole body is in extreme panic. I feel exactly what that little boy was feeling. Exactly. I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm suffocating to death. And it's awful. To your point, it literally can live with you your whole life. And even though you may go decades without the memory resurfacing, you often know something's there and you can't figure out what it is. And many of these survivors turn to alcohol, turn to other forms of addictions to mask it and to cover it up. Unfortunately, many commit suicide, and that's the end of it. And the healing process is not easy. It's really painful because you have to relive all that. But the healing process is also very magical. You literally have to go back to that moment, and you can literally change the narrative and can literally get that out of your body. Unfortunately, many adults, I would say most adults, do not heal because they often have like a dilemma of, okay, I can live with what's familiar with me in my life. Kind of like the classic case of, which this happens a lot of young girls, little girls are raped. And then as they become teenagers and older, they find that they gravitate toward men who abuse them because that's familiar. As awful as it is, it's familiar territory. Well, we can live with our traumas and our abuses, which is awful, or we can go face them, which is more painful. But you got to go the more painful route if you want to heal it, in my opinion. And it can heal, and it's absolutely magical. We can get into the healing process if you want.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.